Ryan is the Director of Government Affairs for the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association, which is the largest national trade association representing the interests of small business trucking professionals and professional truck drivers. And Ryan is going to talk about reforming federal transportation. Come on up, Ryan.
Oh, I'm good right here as well.
Very well.
But thank you all very much. This year is actually OIDA's 40th anniversary. So we started back in 1973 during actually the Arab oil embargo. There were a lot of different groups representing truckers that started during that time. We are the last ones standing. So, and if you could go to the next slide, please. Just to kind of give you a background on us and on the small business segment of the trucking industry. Y'all may be a little bit more familiar with the American Trucking Associations or the individual state trucking and motor carrier groups. They represent the actual fleets. We represent the driver, specifically the independent driver, the guy who owns his own truck. And is out there on the road every day. Trucking is dominated by small business. More than 90% of the industry is made up of fleets that have 20 trucks or less. Half of the industry is that one truck operation. So it's that family in a small town that the husband owns the truck, the wife is back at home brokering freight, lining up permits, things like that. We estimate that our members and their peers haul right around 40% of all U.S. truck freight. Our average member is on the road 120,000 miles a year, 240 nights away from home every single year. They do a lot of long haul work, so differentiation from the less than truckload operations. They do a lot of specialized freight because this is their career. This is not, most of the big truckload fleets have about 100% turnover. Our average member has been in the industry 25 years. So this is their career, this is their life. 2 million miles, safe, accident-free driving. We've recently launched a big effort on safety in terms of training for new drivers. And really mobility for our members is getting their goods in and out quickly so that they can get home at the end of their trip to their family. Let's see if the clicker works here. Excellent. Just a little background on sort of our principles from a highway funding perspective. OIDA feels that there is a clear federal responsibility for highway transportation. It ties into interstate commerce. The National Highway Program provides important focus where states, when left to their own, we've seen have gone off into the wilderness. I was just chatting with Sharon down here about an announcement that the Tennessee DOT made last week where they've all on their own set aside $30 million over 3 years into an intermodal fund to fund bike paths and transit and all the things that our members as major payees into the Highway Trust Fund at the federal level and at the state level run away from and say, no, 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 don't take our money that we're putting into the system for those type of purposes. They did that all on their own at the DOT level without even direction from the state legislature. So we are very strong opponents of diversion of user fees away from highways. We really feel that federal funds need to be spent on national priorities like the National Highway System. We support maintaining a toll-free interstate system. What roads on the interstate are toll-free now should remain that way. We support the language that was in MAP 21. That compromise we think is it's not everything we'd like to see, but it's something that it does represent a good solid compromise. Talk more about that in a minute. We have a lot of concerns with the lease or sale of roads to to private entities. Indiana Toll Road, our members have seen tolls go up over 100%, no real appreciable improvement to that road. We feel that fuel taxes are the best way to fund the program, some way, shape, or form. We oppose truck-specific fees, tolls, VMT taxes. Talking about reform, the most recent highway bill, MAP 21, we feel it has a lot of good, solid reforms that...
Let's see if we need to turn this one off.
That better? Of course it is. Hooray. We feel it's got a lot of good reforms that do matter to our membership. Historic program reforms that really do attack diversion, increase focus on national priorities. It eliminated a lot of the niche programs. There were a lot of mandatory set-aside programs, historic covered bridges, non-motorized transportation programs, safe routes to schools. Those mandatory requirements are eliminated. That said, those eligibilities do still exist, and that is going to be a focus for us going into the next highway bill on trying to ratchet back more so on those eligibilities. Improved project delivery, that was a huge step forward within that bill to speed up the delivery of not just major transportation projects, but small projects within the right-of-way, widening of a road to improve truck turning lane, for instance, is a primary example of something that's going to have an impact on our members. If a project's within the right-of-way, it doesn't have to go through the full process. And a big win that isn't immediately seen within that bill, it's going to take time for state DOTs to implement that, for Federal Highway Administration to implement that, is a performance-based approach. And we think this is a great opportunity to really drive back against even more of that diversion, because states are going to be held accountable for condition of their pavements, condition of their bridges, where in the past they really weren't. That's going to drive a lot of project level investment, more so on the needs. Plus, there's a much greater freight focus in this bill than past approaches to federal highway program. We've seen it almost on a daily basis. I get contact from whether it's a state DOT or a local MPO, the planning community, wanting to talk to our members. That never happened before, and we think that that is a huge step forward. They're going beyond just talking to the state trucking associations. They want to hear from the men and women out on the road. What are your problems? Where do we need to widen? Where do we need to address a hill? Where do we need to add truck parking, which is a huge issue for our members? That's something that's really been seen as a big step forward. As we do look ahead to the next bill and to addressing, whether you agree with there's a funding challenge or not, we certainly do. I did want to walk folks through where our members see tolls, because I do know that gets a great deal of attention, and kind of bring it down to our members' level. If you don't know, truckers are paid by the mile. It is a per mile rate. There is not a reimbursement process. Like, when I was just on travel last week for work, or 2 weeks ago for work, I paid for my plane ticket, anything else that I had, taxi fares, things like that. I go and I get reimbursed for those, from my employer at the end of that trip. Same thing as many of you may after this visit. That does not exist within the trucking industry, by and large. There are a few exceptions, but by and large, it is your per mile rate with the possibility of a fuel surcharge, and that is it. And so the truck driver has to cover everything else within that spectrum. And just to kind of put that into example, for an 80,000-pound tractor trailer driving from Philadelphia to Chicago, and I went and did this last week on the different toll road calculators. The tolls are $268.30. If I make that trip as a trucker 2 times a month, I'm over $1,000. Annually, that's almost $13,000 that somehow I have to cover. Hopefully, I'm getting enough back from my per mileage rate, but I probably am not. So what are my options? I eat that cost. Well, our average member and the average trucker makes about $40,000 a year take-home pay. That's after they pay for fuel, their truck payment, insurance, repairs, tires, all of those things. A $12,000, $13,000 toll bill is going to cut into that pretty significantly. Even one toll going into New York is going to cut into that pretty significantly. So what do truckers do? They avoid the toll road. And that's generally what happens. Tolls, when they are on interstates, they force them off that road. An interstate is the safest, level of highway that we have out there in terms of accident levels. It's also the most efficient road. Instead of incentivizing more trucks to go onto those roads, tolls, from our members' perspectives, disincentivize them to go onto those roads. So moving ahead, sort of where do we kind of fall within what we feel lawmakers and policymakers should consider? We're much in line, as I touched on before, with looking towards some mechanism within the current fuel tax structure. That is one way where, through a fuel surcharge, through something like that, where the trucker does have the opportunity not to carry the full load personally within their own personal income of paying for that highway use. It does offer the opportunity to pass that cost back onto the shipper. We support a gradual adjustment, some sort of an indexing to maintain purchasing power, whether that's to inflation. Fuel economy has been mentioned. We're very open to what Ken touched on from Chairwoman Boxer in terms of conversion to a percentage-based tax. We'll have to see. We want a little bit more experience, see how that shakes out with Virginia and Maryland in terms of fuel price spikes. But we are open to some other methods out there as well. And as y'all do, continue discussions with highway funding and highway reform back in your own states, to ratchet off the federal level, please, use us as a resource. We've got, thousands of members in every state. Our members are very, very aligned with a lot of what you all view in terms of reducing diversion. We don't like transit as a way forward. We don't see a lot of benefit to that from our membership. A good way to get a trucker going, they like to talk a lot, is to talk about dollars going to bike paths. They get pretty angry about that type of activity. So please feel free to use us as a resource. We're certainly happy to help. So with that, I guess I'll wait for questions.
Thank you.